good.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our July safety work group meeting. For those that don't know me, my name is Anna Holder, and I am a co-chair of this work group along with, drum roll,
Jay Davis.
that's you. And sorry, the coffee is great this morning, so get ready, folks. Buckle up. We have a lot of great things to go over today. We're excited to jump into our agenda. But before we do, I like to ground us in a land acknowledgement and just acknowledge and express gratitude for tribal lands in California. For those that don't know, there's close to 200 tribes in California, more than any other state in the United States. And the Cali PA building and the hub of this work group is located in a place that we now call Sacramento, California, which was and still is a gathering place for many local tribes who've lived throughout the Central Valley and foothills since time immemorial and are the original stewards of these lands and waters. But as we know, we're all throughout the state. And so, really connecting and acknowledging the lands that we're all on throughout the state of California is a good practice. The peoples in the Sacramento area include the Nishanan, Maidu, and Miwok peoples and the Putwin and Wintun nations, who have remained committed to the stewardship of these lands and waters over many centuries. And it's important for us to recognize that our organization sits on the tribal lands of Indigenous peoples and that we're here because of the sacrifices that have been forced upon them. And in acknowledging and remembering these governments and communities and all of the work that we do, particularly as we implement our program's revised and refined priorities over the coming years, we hope to honor their legacies, their lives, and their descendants. And if you don't happen to know what tribal lands you might be on, the link at the bottom of the slide can help you out. It's a great resource. All right, I'm gonna pass it off to Jay to walk us through roll call.
All right, thanks, Anna. Looks like we've got a great group here this morning. So when I call out your group, if you could raise your hand, and testing audio is good, so say hello. So let's start with the peer review panel.
Chris Schmidt.
EPA. OEHHA.
Hi, Lauren Sumney's here. Brent Pam's here.
Wes Smith, I was on mute.
There we go. Moss Landing.
Autumn Bonema.
Gary at Chicala.
I want to. Oh, sorry. Was there somebody else?
Yeah, Wes on.
Oh, great. Hi, Wes. I want to make a special acknowledgement for Gary at Chicala. Nice to have you at the meeting, Gary. Gary's one of the original BOG stew members, and even goes back in California bioaccumulation monitoring before the BOG and stew. So great to have you, Gary.
Thanks. That just means I'm old.
A little older than me. Okay, let's go through the regions. Region 1.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Mike Thomas.
Great. Region 2. Region 3. Region 4.
Hi, good morning. This is Emily.
Hi, Emily.
Hi.
Region 5.
Good morning. My name's Heather.
Good morning. My name is Cecil.
Morning, everyone. Lauren Lelis with the Mercury Program and Basin Planning Unit. And yes, Heather and Cecile are are the newest members of the team. So we welcome them to the Safe to Eat work group.
Excellent. Region 6.
Hi, this is Lori Streep.
Lori, Region 7. Region 8. And Region 9. Okay, State Board.
Jennifer Salisbury's here.
Hey guys, Allie Dunn.
Monitoring Council.
Nick's here, everybody.
Oh, great. Hey, Nick. Any tribal members? And then if you don't belong to one of the groups shown, please add your name and affiliation in the chat box for our records. Anybody there were a few folks that got on after we started the roll call. You guys could say hello, that would be good.
Hi, this is Kelly Heck.
Kelly, thank you. All right. I see Gerardo from Region 2 is joining, so we've got more regional reps here. All right. I'm not really looking at the chat, but we got some others putting their info in the chat. Great. All right, let's go on to reviewing the agenda. So we've got our usual quick updates coming up next, and then we have an update on work related to AB 762. Then we're going to have a couple of items about plans, and starting with the long-term monitoring plan draft that we've outlined based on the input that we received in the multi-meeting priority identification process that we've gone through over the past year or so. And then we'll drill in on the draft plan for 2025, and then also kind of say what we can about the draft plan for 2026 in item 5. Then we've got an item on providing feedback on an OEHHA poster, and then we'll wrap up. Any questions about the agenda? Any time constraints that we should know about? All right. Let's go on to the quick updates.
Awesome. So for the past couple of meetings, we've been using this table to summarize where we are with our data monitoring and reporting. The bold indicates new information. So we are very happy to report that all of the organics data from the 2021 Lakes survey are now available in CDN. Huge shout out to Jennifer for kicking booty and taking names with the data and getting us our data as quickly as possible and really catching us up on this backlog that we've had for a couple of years.
And that, I'll jump in, and that means that we can finalize the data report, the draft data report for panel 4. We gave a preview of the Mercury data previously, but now that we've got all of the data, we'll go ahead and draft that report in time for the next STU meeting.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. We're waiting for our organics data from our chemistry lab, but they are starting to submit the organics data for the realignment. We're doing that now. So we're hopeful that we'll have a really firm estimated time of availability for the organics data for all of the 2022 data by our October meeting. If not, definitely by January. But again, Jennifer's working hard, and Tessa and Swamp IQ are working hard to get us that data as quickly as possible so we can catch ourselves up. 2023, the feels like yesterday and such a long time ago. The metals data is available in CDIN, so we are, or it will be available in September. Probably a little bit sooner, but we're wanting to under promise and over deliver on our timeline. So September for sure, likely less than that, and we'll make sure and confirm that update at the next meeting.
And I want to add in here about reporting. It's great that we'll be getting the metals data soon. That will give us the full 10-year data set for for all 5 panels that we'll work up, and then that will allow me and my team to work on the interpretive report on the full 5-panel data set. So that'll be the next draft report coming your way, and targeting January to get that draft report to you all. So looking forward to getting going on that and sharing that with you.
Yeah, so all of these reports, if y'all were with us when we started the long-term monitoring priorities assessment, we initially were really struggling to have conversation and make some decisions and understand our priorities because we wanted these data. So we've gone through that process and made decisions that we'll talk about later today. But it's really exciting to get these data into our hands so we can help make future decisions. 2024 monitoring was slightly delayed because of permit stuff, but our Moss Landing team is out there monitoring really as hard as they can. They started July 15th. If you signed up to our safety work group email list, you should have already received 2 monitoring updates. So I think 3 sites were included in that list, and Autumn and I and the field crews are working to continue to share those updates with you through the Stu email list regularly. Autumn, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add there. Putting you on the spot.
I think you covered it. I do just want to point out that the 3 zones that we've gone to, we've gotten a full gamut of species, so we're considering those closed. So just a refresher, the plan for this is to get up to 5 species to represent the coast as best we can. So the teams are doing great out there. It's nice to hit the ground running like this. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Thanks. If you're unsure of what we're talking about when we refer to zones or where we've gone or where we're headed, there's a link to the monitoring plan on the slide, and I think it was also available in the agenda, so you can check out our plan for this year. And the data reports and things like that will come shortly after we get the data. We also, for the past many months, past year, have been talking about what I'm calling our PFAS archive project. So board, the statewide bioaccumulation monitoring program, and the regional boards are partnering to analyze some of our archive samples for PFAS to start understanding what historical PFAS levels look like and get a better representation of PFAS in California. We know for sure that we will be shipping our samples before March 31st, but because field crews are doing their thing, the lab's busy, when we'll be preparing and specifically when we'll be shipping is to be determined, but we should know more about that and be able to give more specific timelines at every meeting. Yeah, Lauren.
Yeah, for those samples, are there specific water body types that those samples are from, or do they span a variety of water body types? We have someone in our office that's very interested in freshwater PFAS samples, and so yeah, just kind of wanting some more information about that.
Yeah, so a couple of the regions have put in funding to do analysis of specific requests that they have for their region. And then our statewide smattering of samples, I guess we'll say, we're trying to be representative of the whole state and many water bodies. But Jay, I don't know if you have anything you want to share about our priority list.
Yeah, we're generally, I'll be able to share the draft plan for what we're planning to analyze at the next meeting, the next due meeting. But we are targeting, there is a good set of archives for one area in Region 5 that's kind of a good example of what we're trying to aim for. On the American River, where there's a lot of potential PFAS sources nearby. So we're trying to target areas that are kind of worst case scenarios for PFAS, potential PFAS contamination. So we can see, just sort of the upper end magnitude of the problem across the state. So that's one example of a water body where there's connectivity to to potential sources. There's some other good ones along the coast where there are things like refineries, industrial facilities, landfills. So I've been looking at the GIS layers from GeoTracker, and the state board's got a PFAS map of PFAS sites. So looking at that type of information, and in combination of where we've got samples, and basically picking those as the top priorities for doing, for using our statewide funds for the archive analysis.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. Any other questions about monitoring, data reporting before we move on to the next thing? All right. Great. I'll pass it off to OEHHA if you have any other fish consumption advisories that you want to share with us, or if you want to give us a sneak preview of what might be coming out in the next couple of months, that's always welcome.
Sure. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, Gene Wash came out back in June, and we have Lake Berryessa and Lower Poudre Creek and Lake Solano in the queue. We're just kind of held up a little because we're trying to introduce QR codes to our posters, which is an agenda item for later today. So once we get through that, hopefully those two will come forward pretty soon, and then a bunch of others.
Awesome. Thanks, Wes. And sneak peek for October, OEHHA will be telling us their and asking for feedback on priorities for next year's advisories. So
yeah, and we'll probably do that sometime late fall as we do our data crunching and figure out our top priorities, and then get feedback.
Perfect. Nick, anything you want to add to the monitoring council updates?
No, I think that's pretty good for now. Thank you.
I just wanted to flag the open data series that's happening on the council. June 27th was kind of the kickoff of those types of topics. We heard from Greg Gerhardt, the Deputy Director of OEHHA, and Andrew Hamilton, the Assistant Deputy Director of OEHHA. And they talked about open data in general. Andrew walked through some CDIN 2.0 topics. So yeah, highly recommend watching the recording of that item if you have time. And the National Monitoring Conference is happening in March 2025. The call for abstracts came out a couple of weeks ago, and those are due mid-August. All right, that's it. Right, so the training series. As you know, we've been delivering a tribally centered training series this year. we offered three, one in January, one in February, one in March, and the details of those are available on the training series website. Details include slides and recordings of those trainings. Coming in September is the next course in the series. We're going to hear from Swamp IQ a little bit more detail about QAPs and QA/QC, things that folks should consider as they're working through their data and collecting data. And one thing we heard loud and clear through this training series and from other conversations that I've had with tribes is wanting more clarity about how tribal data are used in our California integrated report process. So we have a team from the integrated report team that will be walking us through that process during this training. As I mentioned, the training is the tribal environmental departments and tribal government representatives, tribal monitors specifically, but the recording and the slides are posted shortly thereafter, and folks that aren't affiliated with tribes can check those out after the fact. They're great resources. I will be sending out a course reminder and kind of flagging the new focus of the September training. And sending out an availability poll to try and get the final two trainings scheduled. One will be led by Jay, who's going to talk about, okay, you've got your data. Now what do you do with it? How do we interpret things appropriately? And what does that look like? And resources folks can use to help them do that. And then our last course will be held in December, led by Wes of OEHHA, who's going to talk about the process that OEHHA uses to develop their fish advisories. So if you are a part of a tribal government or partners with tribal government folks that are interested in bioaccumulation monitoring, please send that announcement to them when it comes out in like a couple weeks. Cool. Next, many of you probably saw this, but the US EPA published a list of recommendations for monitoring programs to monitor for, to support fish advisories, or just to watch. In early July, there's links to the webpage and fact sheet and press release, but our conversations about PFAS for the last almost 2 years are very timely. PFAS is, added to these lists and kind of like a main part of these lists, but you can also see cyanotoxins showing up and other things. What this means for our statewide monitoring program is when we update our quality assurance project plan, or QAP, we're going to make sure that these analytes are included to the extent that we can. I don't know if Jay or OEHHA have anything to add. If anyone has questions?
I'll say a little bit more. So these PFAS analytes are on the list that the lab that we use includes. So Axis Analytical does, we checked, and then all of these are, all the PFAS are on their list, both from table 1 and table 2. Another thing I want to note is that we've talked about microcystin analysis in fish, and there's we need to do some literature review to see how feasible that is, if microcystin persists in fish tissue, and what the handling protocols would be for collecting fish for that purpose. So I am planning on doing a literature review on that. Haven't had a chance to do that yet. I do know microcystins accumulate in mussels, and we've got a pretty strong data set for San Francisco Bay on microcystin and other toxins in mussels. So I know that can be done, but we're not sure about fish. So we'll be doing a little research on that.
Yeah, Wes, go for it.
Yeah, Jay, we should definitely talk, because we've been thinking about that too in regards to cyanotoxins. And also, it's great to see all the work with PFAS happening as we move forward with developing advisory tissue levels. And that's it.
Great. The end. Harry.
I see a list of inorganics there that's broader than what we've typically included. I'm wondering if there's a consideration for adding any of those, like I see lead is highlighted, so forth, cadmium, inorganic arsenic. Any thoughts on those?
My initial thought is nothing is ever fully off the table in terms of people identifying requests and things like that through our annual feedback process. But it all comes down to our budgets and what we can afford to do together with everything else. So yes, maybe adding things. We want to make sure we do our best to maintain and continue to collect data to maintain our ability to look at trends over time, especially as we're getting the results of our 10-year surveys coming in.
Yeah, I can say a little more. Those metals have long been on the list of potential analytes. I mean, that's nothing new. The EPA guidance that came out in 2000, had those contaminants on the list back then. It's been a conscious choice to not measure those. We've done some limited monitoring of arsenic across the state. In the 90s, the RMP looked at all the metals and nothing else. None of these other metals that we're not looking at really jumped out. But yeah, as Anna said, if OEHHA expressed an interest in getting data on these, we would definitely look at that. But OEHHA has also not been asking for data on these analytes. So neither the Water Board or OEHHA have really been asking for this. So it's been a conscious omission to date.
Yeah, okay, it makes sense. I just wondered if there was anything new because of the CPA doc. Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, and we can always revisit, some of the contaminants that we haven't done as much monitoring for. But I think that's a broader conversation for a different day.
I appreciate where your head's at, Wes. Cool. Great. I just wanted to flag that Wes and I participated in the Delta Stewardship Council Science for Communities workshop. We've been part of a team to help support the California Indian Environmental Alliance, or SIA, to update this shopper's guide, this brochure that you can see on the slide. We started working with them, I don't know, April, May, a couple months ago, and we've been meeting with them regularly to kind of figure out how we can support the important work that SIA does. And we ultimately decided to help revamp the shopper's guide that they actually developed in early 2000s, I think. So we reviewed it, and Wes took a look with the OEHHA lens to make sure we're providing appropriate guidance for healthy fish consumption. We partnered with the other folks representing the other logos on this slide, particularly Santarem Consulting and CSU Water. And the presentation, the workshop itself was held on July 12th. And the recording is available, and that link takes you directly to our spot of our part of the workshop. But there were presentations by other teams that did great work on PFAS and homelessness and other topics that, if you're interested in that sort of work, the recording is there for you. I don't know, Wes, if you had anything else you wanted to share about that process.
No, I thought it was a good, worthwhile process, and it was good to work with different groups.
Yeah. And this is the product that was developed, but we had lots of awesome conversations about other resources that could be helpful. And I know my head's spinning about like how we can make those a reality in partnership with SIA, but also just in general as part of our responsibility as the statewide program to serve all Californians. So, and I'm sure Wes is thinking the same thing.
Yep.
Cool. And I'll pass it back to Jay. He's going to walk us through these updates.
Time's flying, so I'm going to go pretty quick here, but if anybody's got questions, you can follow up with me after the meeting. We have some breaking news from the Bay RMP. Well, one bit of news is not so breaking, but the RMP is getting a big increase in funding. EPA is establishing a program office for San Francisco Bay and greatly increasing the amount of federal funding that's coming to support water quality, science, and management in San Francisco Bay. Putting it more on a par with other parts of the country that have been getting more funding for a long time, like Puget Sound and Chesapeake Bay and the Great Lakes. So the Bay is getting going to be getting $54 million a year for work in San Francisco Bay, and as part of that, the RMP, which has had a budget of about $4 million a year, we're going to double in size over the next couple of years to an $8 million a year annual budget. And an important part of that is going to be expanded fish monitoring. So I'm kind of jumping down to the last bullet. We have been planning on coordinating with the Region 2 realignment effort, and we've got some sampling that's happening this year where we're collecting samples at one location that's of high interest. So we'll be providing some data that we know that the Region 2 communities really want. But then another element that's part of the work plan that we're proposing for this increased funding from EPA will be to work with communities to collect fish next summer. So we want to do this in coordination with the Region 2 sampling that'll be happening next summer under the realignment effort. But a big hurdle was just passed yesterday where that element of the proposed work plan was basically approved by the group that's deciding on the work plan. So there will be $100,000 in the budget for this EPA work plan to support that community engaged sampling effort that we want to make collaboration and kind of addition to what's happening with the Region 2 realignment. So that's pretty cool. But then sort of the normal business, this year is a year that we sampled the Bay and the RMP on a 5-year cycle. This is with our old budget, not the new funds yet. But the sampling finally started last week. It took a while to get our permit, but we finally got that, and sampling has started, and we're still dotting I's, crossing T's on the sampling plan, but we'll be posting that soon for anybody who's interested in the details. I've talked in the past about the development of a consumption survey questionnaire for subsistence fishers that was funded with Region 2 funds. This process went very well, and we completed this first phase of developing a questionnaire. And that report on that process is available on the project webpage. That's linked here. Next slide. And then there's another project that's kind of a prototype for this community engaged fish monitoring that we hope to extend with those EPA funds. This project started last fall, and it's EPA funded as well, but it's its own separate project led by this community organization. And in Vallejo, all positive possible. So this has been proceeding. I've talked about it in past meetings. Again, if you want more information, just reach out to me. But the sampling went well, and the sample processing and analysis is underway with Moss Landing and Axis again, who does the organics analysis for the RMP as well and generates great data. So we'll be getting looking forward to getting data in the coming months.
Awesome.
Okay.
Jay? Awesome. Any other updates that folks from the group want to share before we go on to our next item? All right, our next speaker's ready to go. So before I pass it over to you, Angie, I just want to remind folks that we've been hearing from Angie, from the water boards, giving us updates around this time every year for the past couple of years on how the AB 762 grant program, grant project is going. This, if you aren't aware, AB 762 is legislation that made funds available to reimburse local health offices for posting advisory signs near water bodies. So I'm excited to hear from Angie again this year. I will stop sharing and pass it off to you. I'm assuming you have slides, and go ahead and take it away, Angie.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Anna. Can you hear me? Can you see, or can you see me and hear me?
You look amazing. You sound even better.
Okay. I'm going to share the screen. And before I start, I'm just kind of getting over getting sick, so I might need to mute for a second. Hopefully my voice holds out. So let's see here. Share. I'm not used to this new Zoom, but let's see. Share. Try this again. I'll just share the whole screen.
Awesome. It is coming up for us.
Okay.
There's usually a little bit of a lag.
Okay. Good, good. So before I start, I'm curious who here is from state board, for example, and who here is from OEHHA. I mean, I'm just curious who's on the call. If you guys.
Yeah, so we have a smattering of state and regional water board representatives. We've got folks from OEHHA, some other agencies that regularly participate, Biomonitoring California, the Monitoring Council. We've got a couple of California Native American tribes and a couple of local, I think, water agencies are with us as well.
Okay, good to know. All right. Well, thanks for having me back. It's been about a year, like you said, that we've had quite a few things happening. So yeah, my name's Angie Norda. I work for the Division of Financial Assistance with the State Water Board. And so most of my work is stormwater. This grant project is a little bit different for me, but the name of the grant project is the Fish and Shellfish Consumption Advisories Program. So today I want to go over the grant purpose, which will be review for some of you who have been here and seen this before. And then I'd like to go over what's happened in the last year, what's been completed, and then the upcoming funding as well. And then at the end, I'll open it up for questions. So the purpose of the grant is to help California local agencies post health warnings for fish consumption. And the grant has main tasks of providing outreach to the local agencies, also developing an application, and then notifying local agencies of awards. And then it also includes collecting those reimbursement requests and getting everything organized to get those local agencies paid. So as a recap for those, or for those who don't already know, the fish consumption advisories, or I'll just say advisories, they are how often you can safely eat fish and shellfish caught from water bodies in the state. And this right picture is what the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, OEHHA, provides on their website with the information for consumption of each species listed. So, and then the website for the OEHHA fish advisories is there on the slide also. This is a screenshot when you go to that link at the OEHHA site. So the bottom section, you can search for the advisories, looking up water body, county, etc. And then the top part is listing the statewide advisories. And as you'll see, some of them say without site-specific advice. So there's statewide advisories, and then there's site-specific advisories also. I was notified this morning by Wes Smith that currently there's 149 site-specific advisories. So that's gone up since I last heard any updates. So legislation and funding, Assembly Bill 762 required posting of site-specific advisories, and before that was only urged. And then it also requires state board to award grants to either nonprofits or local agencies. And then Senate Bill 74 allocated $380,000 for this fish advisories program. And that includes it ended up being CCDH. I'll go over that in a minute, but it includes the grantee costs plus the cost for the local agencies to install these health warning signs. So the grant agreement was executed in 2021. It's between State Board, Division of Financial Assistance, and the California Conference of Directors of Environmental Health, CCDEH. And then the State Board can approve $50,000 annually for this grant. So as needed, that money can be added to the grant. We've had 2 amendments to the grant since 2021. So we've added funding, and then we also changed the end date. We extended it out to February 2026 so they can keep working on the program.
Angie? So
yes.
What's the total amount that's been allocated?
Currently it's 530,000. That includes the first round of funding and this upcoming second round.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So updates, funding round 1 is completed. Approximately $213,000 was reimbursed to 22 agencies. And then approximately 665 signs were installed at 68. I have 100 here because that's, sorry, I didn't update that, of the 149 site-specific advisories. So they've posted at 68 water bodies so far from this funding. So lessons learned for round 1. there were some eligibility questions that came up. So in round 2, we're going to be make sure that CCDH includes some of these items in their outreach. So it's really clear going in what's eligible. So per the statute, the signage needs to be installed within 180 days after the award notification. And so our legal staff is essentially determined that we can't allow any extensions of that. We can re-award, which we did for a few agencies, and they have kind of reset the time clock. But essentially, late signs are ineligible. And so replacement signs are eligible if they're installed by before that due date. And then another clarification, buying extra signs for future replacement. It's like I'm calling that stockpiling signs for later use. That's not eligible. So they have to have those. Any signs they print up, they need to have those installed before they can get reimbursed for that work. So some of the agencies, in round 2, they can apply if they weren't quite done with their installations. So item 2 here for lessons learned, only site-specific advisory signage is eligible per the statute. And that's, so those statewide advisories that I showed on the OEHHA website, those aren't eligible, unfortunately, for reimbursement under the grant. Here's the slide again of the OEHHA site. And so there's the section up above, and those are the ones that are not eligible. So round 1, another lesson learned, we're just going to clarify for round 2 to make sure that the signs are durable and properly fastened, securely fastened wherever they're posted. Most agencies didn't have an issue with this, but these pictures, the one on the right, top right, is one example. In this case, it was 2 sheets of metal, the white part, and then I'm not sure what the middle core was made out of, but this seemed to be kind of a typical type of sign for some of the agencies that seemed to be, look, I saw this one in person, this is my picture, but I mean, it just seemed to be durable. So, they could use other materials, but moving forward, just asking that they can make sure that essentially the useful life of the sign is, they're going to meet that useful life. So the other 3 pictures I included here just to show that they're attaching these at different places. So the top left one is on a building. I think it was on a tackle shop nearby. And then the bottom right is a pier, decking. And then the left bottom is a message board in that location. So just some clarifications for round 2. And then, so funding round 2, or I think they're calling it phase 2, is in progress. So we recently, like I said, we approved Amendment 2 of the agreement. So that extended the agreement out to February 2026. The budget for the remaining part of the grant at this stage is about $237,000 just for the sign implementation for the local agencies. And CCDH is working on their outreach document, which is updated for round 2. And then they'll be preparing that updated application. Time-wise, I'm guessing they'll get the application and outreach done in the next month, hopefully, and send that out to all the local agencies. And probably by this fall, the due date will be set for sometime this fall for those applications to be submitted. And then it'll take about a month for CCDH to put together all that information and send out the awards, I'm guessing. So from that time frame, they would have 180 days to install their signs. All right, so just to recap, round one of the grant project is completed. There's 213,000 for signs that was reimbursed. The grant amendment will currently go out to February 2026. This program is meant to be ongoing if there's the need for the signs. So, that $50,000 that is allowed to be added annually, I would expect that we'd be able to amend this again once that time comes. Round two, like I said, is currently in progress, and there's about $237,000 for signage under that round. So we're hoping we get a good turnout for the applications. And then recap of next steps, CCDH will be sending out that outreach, and all that updated eligibility should be listed so agencies know a little bit better, the requirements of the signs, or the eligibility of the signs. We're also going to require, since in round two, some of the signs didn't quite match up with what OEHHA had posted on their website. So we're going to be suggesting a process where OEHHA can review their draft signage, just to make sure that the local agencies don't print out incorrect information on their signs. So CCDH will send out that application hopefully in the next month or maybe two, and then the next step would be, the applications due probably this fall. And I think that's pretty much my recap. Are there any questions, comments?
I have a question to get us started. Oh, go ahead, Wes.
Oh, I was just going to mention that I think thanks for the presentation, Angie, and that's a great idea to have the people posting the sign, the health departments and environmental health directors, to contact us, because we can also offer them updated posters with our QR codes that we'll discuss a little later. That way they don't just pull it off our website and then we update it, shortly thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I think if I'm recalling correctly, last year you had mentioned that your team was working on developing a report to the legislature. And with that was going to come a web page specific to this project with resources. Has that been set up? Like, can I share a link to that web page or the legislative report or anything like that?
The legislative report was prepared and submitted to OLA. We have, I think the person at OLA no longer works there, and so we've emailed a couple different times to find out the status of their review of that, and we haven't heard back. So we don't have like an approved version of that yet to post. So there's not a website at this stage, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll hear back soon and we can get that going. There really wasn't that much information to, at the time we submitted it, a lot of the cost estimates were estimates. So, after round two of funding, we're gonna know a lot more information. And we actually, in the last amendment, built in a new task for CCDEH to prepare all that information to put, so we can add that into the revised legislative report if they want a revised version sent over. So, yeah.
I think we'll go to Alan and then keep moving to try and catch up some time. Alan, go ahead.
Hey all, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, you sound
Okay,
good.
perfect. Microphone had an issue earlier. Hey Angie, thanks for the presentation. That was great and very helpful. And I'm glad to see that you guys are working with CCDEH regarding this whole grant thing. I work for Orange County Environmental Health here, so I'm representing one of the local agencies that received grant funding in the phase 1. Did have a quick question for you because we were contacted from a fish contamination education collaborative, and they kind of take part for the Palos Verdes Shelf US EPA Superfund area. And we actually replaced some of their signs, which had basically the same information. I just wanted to make sure that OEHHA or the state boards were in communication with this particular collaborative, if you've heard of them.
I haven't heard of that collaborative.
Okay.
I'm not sure if OEHHA wants to chime in too on that.
Yeah, we've recently re-engaged with them as of like the spring, so not long. And they did mention that in one of the meetings because we're working with them to help develop their new signs because they're developing new signs to post. And yeah, I think Alan, maybe I could forward you the contact. Or have you been in contact with Renee Jordan Ward?
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
So we actually ended up having a discussion and I never really got to the bottom of it per se, but it seemed like they were okay with our signs, just they wanted to be in communication. So
yeah, I think it's just
sure.
coordination, and they have different requirements being a Superfund site.
Right.
So it's with any new posting, I think as long as you're coordinating with them, and we'll try to be aware of anything and we can reach out or talk with them if we know of any information. But I know they are finalizing new signs.
Okay.
So it might be where I'll bring it up at our next meeting.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Harry, you got 1 minute for your question and then we're moving on.
Well, just a quick comment. It sounds like a great program, very clear presentation, so I appreciated it. Good to hear it.
Totally worth a minute. Thanks for sharing, Harry. Awesome. I'm gonna reshare my screen and start walking us through the next item. Jay and I are gonna be tag teaming, talking about our long-term monitoring plan that Jay has been developing in response to the process that we've all gone through over the past couple of years. So speaking of which, if you want more details about that process and the timeline and like get into the weeds of all of that, I would recommend checking out, I think it was the April Safety Workgroup meeting, where we kind of go through everything in more detail. For the sake of time and because I want to get to the good stuff that Jay has, I'm gonna skip through the next couple of slides pretty quickly, but I just want to ground us in acknowledging that we didn't just make up this plan or these priorities off the top of our head. We've been soliciting feedback from y'all since January of 2023, and this is like the culmination of all of that work. The key big picture priorities that we decided on back in April are represented in the last end of this this timeline slide here, where we're going to be focusing on filling data and information gaps in each of the water bodies, starting with lakes, and then we'll hit rivers, and then we'll do the coastal survey. And the reason why we wanted to fill data and information gaps is because there's a lot of information coming in from our data backlogs and things like that. And we didn't feel comfortable deciding on whether or not continuing with our trend survey methods as we have been is the best use of the limited funding that we have at this time. And we've been talking about PFAS a lot. We want to start getting that data in our hands from our archives, but also fresh from new monitoring so that we can be ready when, and provide data to OEHHA to develop their advice and provide data for the water boards for their process when that time comes. And I'm going to say this every time we talk about this long-term plan. We're locking in our, general water body types for the next 5 years. So that means for the regional boards, where we're generally heading and what type of requests we're going to be asking for the next 5 years. Contracts are wild, as we all know. Discretionary funds are even worse, right? So I'm really encouraging folks to start thinking about how we can leverage our collective resources to make all of our limited money go farther over the next 5 years. And that means thinking about putting funds into contracts or, whatever. And this slide just is a summary of what you get out of it. We pay for a lot of the expensive bits, and you get awesome data that you get to help us decide where to collect. We've been presenting this slide for quite a bit. Basically, we're meeting all of our timelines. Jay's going to present the plan now, and this will kind of open up a feedback process until September 1st, and then we'll take recommendations into consideration and finalize and present the final plan in October. So with that, take it away, Jay. It's all you.
Thank you, Anna. So at the last STU meeting, Anna gave an overview of the management direction based on all the input that was received from all of you all. I want to refresh your memory on some of the other elements of the direction that we got from management. One was to include different funding tiers. So the future funding, like being kind of anticipating the future funding either going in a good direction or a bad direction from where we are now. So you'll see in my later slides, I characterize our current funding level as a bare bones funding level, but I presented a scenario where the funding goes even lower. But then also a couple of tiers where the funding is increased. So that's part of what you're going to see, including ideas for special projects. You'll see what the list of those projects is, and these are things that we could entertain with, if we do get funding increases. The direction was to try to scale back on mercury analysis. We've been putting a lot of resources into mercury analysis, trying to do it only where it's specifically needed or requested. Personally, I think it's probably going to be in a lot of places, but that's up to the input that we received from the group. Looking at PFAS, especially at water bodies that are close to sources. That's really what we're aiming for with the PFAS archive study to get started with that. But we're also anticipating including PFAS in the monitoring that we do going forward. And then doing trend analysis only when it's specifically requested. Okay, next slide. So I want to provide a little background that's, I think, valuable frame of reference financially, but then also on some of the ideas that we're still thinking about and have been implementing over the years. Back in 2008, Val Connor, who was then the lead of the SWAMP program, asked me to write a report on recommendations for statewide bioaccumulation monitoring. And I know a couple of you would remember Val Connor. I'm not sure quite how many, but it's a good thing Gary and Autumn are around. She was great. So back then I also came up with tiers. Again, it was Val's request that we think about things in tiers. And tier 1, so kind of a low, medium, high funding level. The low level was where we would do statewide monitoring of 40 targeted sites per year. It's kind of the level of funding that we ended up having over the past 10 to 15 years. At an increased funding level, we could expand things, and some of the ideas were to do more intensive monitoring in particular regions, kind of stepwise going through the regions and doing more intensive monitoring. Continuing, well, back then we did some really truly random statewide sampling. More of that, plus prey fish, plus bird eggs and special studies. Those are the sorts of things we could add in at that 1.5 million per year level. And then at a 3.3 million per year level, there was a concept of basically doing the realignment style of work, but in a big way across the state, and trying to get through that type of community directed monitoring in a 10-year time frame. So basically doing one region per year, like in a kind of, is based on what we've been doing lately in a really accelerated way, in addition to doing all of the other monitoring and shellfish. So next slide. So those were some grand ideas, kind of thinking even broader than we are currently. But I think it's a good reference point to look at the funding level that was envisioned back then. So if you factor in inflation since 2008, so 15 years worth of inflation, it's about a 50% increase in dollars. So that lowest level would be 750,000 per year, and then 2.25, and then 5. So we've actually been what we considered the low level of funding. We've actually been below that for the last few years. So those are, I think, just some good reference points. Next slide. So some more background in recent years, as those of you who have been involved with this stew for a few years now, we've been able to do about 35 lakes per year in the long-term bass lake monitoring effort. But that took some creative budget work on the part of Autumn and Anna and the swamp team so that we could complete those 5 panels at that level of effort. It's not sustainable with the level of funding that we currently have. Sorry for the sirens. Is that coming through? Okay, good. With the current level of funding, we're scoping this out, and we'll talk about this more later in the next item, the specific plan for 2025 and 26. With our current pricing for everything, and with a large chunk of the funding going to realignment, for the statewide sampling, we can do approximately 15 stations, whether it's lakes, rivers, or zones per year with that current funding level. And with inflation, the number shrinks as the years go by. Next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some funding tiers and lay out what the different scenarios look like and some of the options as we get into potential, thinking about higher levels of funding. But I'm starting with tier 2 because this is the current funding level. Again, I call this the bare bones plan. Anna helped me with some good graphics to symbolize each of the plans. So the skull and crossbones is compliments of Anna. So with the current funding for next year, the next few years, based on what we currently know and have to work with, we're planning on the realignment work getting about 150,000 per year. These numbers are referring to just sampling and analysis. There's more that goes into realignment than that, Anna's time and, state board staff time. My time goes into that, but this is just this, for all of these, I'm focusing on the sampling and analysis budgets. So realignment's getting about 150K per year, and we have about 350K per year for monitoring across the state. So following that guidance that Anna reviewed, we're focusing on filling data gaps for lakes for the next 2 years, and then rivers, and then the coast. And we can do about 15 locations per year. The actual number depends on the analyte list for each water body, and the specific requests that are made. But that's about the number that we can do. So this funding level is not enough for a systematic statewide design. We can make it work to do targeted sampling of high priority water bodies where there are data gaps, but it's not really enough to do anything like we did with the Bass Lakes, where we had a systematic statewide design. But we can do this targeted sampling of high priority locations to fill data gaps. One of the challenges with this approach, we probably need to rethink the bite monitoring, because the bite has like 32 zones, I believe. So we can't really, that would take basically 2 years worth of our budget, and we would have to decide whether that was a priority relative to trying to cover the whole coast in the 2 years of funding that we have for the coast. So there's a challenge with the current funding level on doing the bite. We're planning on targeted inclusion of mercury, PCBs, and PFAS, targeted inclusion of prey fish. And in discussing this with Anna and Autumn, there's a lot of work goes into planning and having this group provide feedback, and all the sort of infrastructure support that goes into the monitoring. So this is really just barely worth the effort to coordinate and manage. Just to do 15 stations across the state per year is a pretty minimal level of sampling, considering everything else that needs to go into it. Okay, so that's current bare bones. So tier 1, so kind of dropping down to a lower funding level, really bare bones. I'm calling this the weak coffee plan. And the analogy here is that as the coffee gets weaker and weaker, it reaches a point where it's not really coffee anymore. It's not really worth drinking. I'm borrowing this analogy from Tom Grieve of Tetra Tech, that he brought this up in an R&P selenium meeting that Harry may remember, but I liked it a lot. It's often a challenge that monitoring programs are faced with. We're trying to make the dollars go as far as possible and do what we can with limited budgets. And at some point, it's not worth the overall effort to do the sampling. But what we could do with a reduced budget. So here the realignment budget is going to be fixed at least the current level. If we get more funding, we can look at increasing that. But what this plan does is basically take the 350 per year from the tier 2 plan and spread that over 2 years. So do the monitoring every other year. So do 15 locations, but do it every other year. So we could do even more more carefully targeted sampling of the very high priority locations to fill data gaps. On the coast, we would have to pare back to selected zones. The bike collaboration would get even more challenging. I'm not sure what we would do there. So, but Anna and Autumn and I are kind of thought about this and think that it's probably not worth the effort to coordinate and manage statewide monitoring with this week of coffee. So one option could be to just fold that 175K into realignment and bolster the realignment effort. So that's a question, is it worth doing at that level statewide? Okay, so that's the pessimistic scenario. Now let's start thinking about if we're able to get more funding for this important water quality issue in California. So tier 3 is a moderate funding level, and I'm going to present some different options that we could do with moderate funding, but I'm starting with just as a familiar reference point, maintaining the program as we've been implementing it from 2015 to 2024. So Anna referred to this as doing trend monitoring statewide. It's like continuing the long-term Bass Lake monitoring, continuing to do the coast on a 10-year cycle, and doing some river monitoring. We're not as systematic about the river monitoring, but it's more of a targeted approach in rivers. But with moderate funding, we could allocate more funds to realignment. I'm sure the inflation is at work with that work as well, and I'm sure we could make good use of a little more funding there. And then it would cost about $700,000 per year to do the sampling and analysis for statewide monitoring at about the level that we were doing for the last 10 years. So about 30 locations per year. We could continue those statewide designs. We could continue the partnership with the BITE program, like we did in the last, sort of 10-year round of sampling, and generally include mercury and PFAS and targeted PCB. So the change here is a concern about PFAS is growing, so we anticipate building that into the program in a more general way like we do for mercury. Okay, next. So now we're really dreaming big, thinking about what if we had really robust funding? And there was a line that I had in that 2008 report that I thought was good, where the funding is commensurate with the task of monitoring and reducing risks from bioaccumulation in a state as large and diverse as California, and with as much resources as California has. Bioaccumulation, we've documented bioaccumulation is a big problem. There's we've got all these advisories across the state. There's a big need for data to support advice and to support efforts to identify water bodies that are exceeding objectives and to try to do something about the contamination. So I think it would be very warranted, kind of just stepping back and looking at this issue in California to have more robust funding for it. So at this highest funding tier, we would do all the things from tier 3 plus, and these are the things that came up in the priorities discussions. So one I think big one is the realignment effort as currently being implemented is going to take another 25 years or whatever. We're spending 3 years per region. So I think that sends the wrong message to the tribes and communities about the importance of this work. So we maybe as one way of stepping that up would be to if we could double the realignment effort, including state board staff to coordinate it. We could, I think a nice goal would be to complete the realignment effort in 10 years and basically double the pace by doubling the resources. So we're thinking big here. Another item that was mentioned by a lot of people in the priorities discussion was the need for consumption information. So, and this is, we've talked about this for, since the beginning of the bog, that there's a long-standing need to understand where people are actually fishing and eating the fish. So ideally, we would do a coordinated statewide effort. There's some regional efforts happening along these lines, but coordinated statewide effort to get this information would be really valuable. We've talked about shellfish monitoring. We haven't been able to fit that in because it's expensive. It's a different type of sampling. And then a couple of other things that have come up are data access related, open data and interactive data resources, and development of an app for tribes and communities. And this is something that there are plans to get this underway. But we could also expand it beyond tribes and communities and have an app that goes to the fishing, fishers across the state in general. Okay, next slide. So there are some different options at the moderate funding level. So one is to bolster the statewide monitoring. Another would be to selectively do the turbo realignment to double the pace of realignment. So put 350K and added 350K towards that, and then leave the bare bones level of targeted monitoring statewide. So that's another option. Next slide. So another option would be to prioritize the consumption survey and put funds towards that. So again, keeping realignment at a somewhat bolstered level, keeping the targeted statewide work going, but then putting a lot of money towards the statewide consumption survey. And one way of doing that could be to do that on a region by region basis over a 9-year period. And I think that level of funding could be enough to do that per region annually. Next. Another option with the moderate funding would be to, again, maintain realignment and bare bones statewide, but add in shellfish. And I don't think we need 350K per year for a 10-year period for shellfish. I think we could probably fill a lot of the data gaps with a more limited effort, maybe a 2-year effort statewide to get a handle on the status of shellfish bioaccumulation statewide. Okay, next slide. So thanks to Anna for inspiring the need for a slide that summarizes everything and includes a visual and for all the icons that hopefully you saw along the way and that are added here. So this is just summarizing everything from the wheat coffee to the bare bones, tier 3 where it's realignment plus and the bare bones statewide, and then you pick one add-on, and then tier 4 would include all of those priority add-on projects that have been discussed. So this is a sort of a preliminary presentation of what we've got in mind for the long-term plan. For October, we would do, I'll do a write-up, but wanted to outline it first for y'all, provide a chance for some thoughts and feedback.
We are running a little bit behind schedule, but we do have a couple of minutes. We can do a couple of minutes. Does anyone have questions about what Jay just went over? Just wanting to reiterate that we haven't, particularly for the wheat coffee plan, we have not decided to take that plan on, but we just wanted to be very clear about potential options. For that plan in particular, a lot of discussion would need to be had in order for us internally to get approval to go to a every other year monitoring plan. So that's not something that we would pursue lightly. But it is a potential reality of ours, given our current levels of funding and costs and things like that. So wanting to be really transparent about that. Harry.
Well, it was hard to follow all of the different options going through. In my case, I had trouble picturing all of that. The summary graphic was helpful, but I was wondering if we could get a spreadsheet that might have rows and columns about what's included down the left side, and across the top, maybe the tier 1, 2, 3, 4 with X's about what's in there, or dollar amounts, or some way to look at it in a way without looking through the individual slides and trying to picture it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good suggestion.
And Jay's going to be writing a formal report that summarizes all of this. So that I think that would make a good table or appendix.
Yeah.
Wes.
Hey Jay, thanks for the report. I appreciate the comedic relief, and definitely like the idea of shellfish sampling as well as fish consumption surveys. I mean, I think those are very important data gaps. And one thing I was just curious on the long-term sort of trends in shellfish. I haven't looked at the Mussel Watch data specifically, but I'm wondering, given their shorter lives in general, I'm assuming, and high harvest rates, how contaminants may change in shellfish over time. Just thinking akin to the longer term mercury monitoring, where it doesn't change a whole lot.
Yeah, the shellfish are accumulating, sort of being an index for a shorter time period. So in some types of monitoring, that we take advantage of that and transplant mussels and then pick them up and analyze them after a 3-month deployment period. Different contaminants have different uptake and depuration rates in mussels. But in general, they're more of an index of maybe a few month period than the multi-year. The fish are more of an annual. Like even the bass are a lot of the mercury in a largemouth bass came from the previous 12 months, like more like 70% or so. We've done some modeling to show that. So, but yeah, the mussels are more of a shorter term indicator of what's in the water column.
Yeah, and because I know we do mussels for oil spills because the PAHs depurate relatively quickly, and yeah, just wondering how those models look to use as the basis for an advisory over time versus the fish tissue data. But yeah, it changes depending on location, contaminant. So
yeah, and I
interesting.
actually recently have connected with the NOAA Mussel Watch program lead, and I'm trying to get them on the docket to give us a presentation for hopefully early next year. So stay tuned for that, but we can ask all of our shellfish questions to those experts hopefully very soon.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Lauren.
Hey everyone. Yeah, thanks for putting all these options together. I know it's a lot to digest and to project when we don't really have all the information. But I think it was under the wheat coffee scenario where there would be that, I think it was 175K rolled into the realignment. So if that was a possibility, what else would the realignment be able to do with that? And you don't have to answer it right now, but I guess I just like to say, okay, if we're not doing all that other things that were on the list, what would we get from the realignment efforts? And also just kind of a follow-up question about just the realignment, are you getting the feedback and the need from tribes to really do some robust monitoring, at least with the 2 regions you've worked with so far?
Yeah, I think the short answer to your first question, you're not going to like, it depends. It depends on who we're talking to, which like interests, which regions, what the needs are. It could be that, you know, maybe we do 2 smaller regions and we can do 2 realignments at the same time. Maybe we do a larger region. Like I can't answer that even in Jay's report.
There's not a bullet point list
Yeah.
that you have on the side.
As far as what we're hearing from tribes and communities through the realignment process in San Diego and what we learned through that and what we're hearing from San Francisco, to be frank, we're not getting as much engagement as we'd like, but that's honestly to be expected given the history of governments in general in the United States and in California. For the folks that are able to engage in the process, their feedback is highly valuable. So even though we're not hearing from, you know, dozens and dozens of you know, tribes and community organizations, I think we're still learning a lot, and more importantly, we're building relationship. The monitoring for me is just a perk. It's about building that relationship. My hope is over time we can, you know, deepen those relationships and hear more from tribes and communities in this process. But yeah, you know, we wish more folks were able to attend and had the capacity to attend, but like bandwidth and capacity for all of us is a really big issue. So
Yeah, and I just like to echo that for our region. You know, we definitely try to bolster those relationships as much as possible, and we've provided opportunities for funding that we're not really getting a lot of takers on. So I'm like, okay, are you just, you know, is your email, you know, just filling up with requests to, you know, to sample and monitor out there? But yeah, so it sounds like we're kind of on the same page, and just kind of leading from that into what Wes had said too, the consumption studies. I definitely plug some of those consumption studies too, because those are going to be needed for the regional boards down the line as well, as we develop more water quality objectives for the tribal beneficial uses. So thank you both.
Thanks, Lauren.
Well, quick response on that. If you know, I think we could do an assessment of whether for the week coffee plan, you know, if we you know, stop the statewide targeted monitoring and use the 175K for something else. If we don't really think the realignment process would need that, we could look at trying to do something on consumption. It's another possibility, or one of the other special projects that are on the list.
And I also want to add that all of these funding scenarios are just including funds coming from the statewide program. So in the past, regions have been able to contribute funds to the process. So that's not off the table. If the regions are excited about something and we get substantial funding from multiple places, then, you know, we might be able to up a tier 1 year, you know, because that's how the resources shake out. So, you know, just putting that out there as food for thought for folks. And we're always looking for more funding for the statewide program and trying to find ways to get creative to, you know, address some of these projects. Jay mentioned the application. We did get some funding for that, and that's going to be starting, the development of that is going to be starting next year. So just because it's in a pie in the sky dream doesn't mean we're not going to try and tackle it sooner rather than later. I saw a hand, but now it's not there.
Wes, that was you?
Yeah, that was me, Jay. I think you largely answered what I was asking about, and I really respect, Anna, your position with relationship building, and then also recognizing the cost of kind of scaling back these statewide programs. And if the realignment isn't really needing those funds, then maybe that's a big cost to pay for the rest of the state of California. And that, so I appreciate, Jay, your comment about maybe there's some other options.
Yeah. Okay, so if there's no other feedback right now, like I mentioned, Jay's going to be writing all of this up. So if something comes, give Jay some feedback on your thoughts so he can integrate that into the report, please do so by September 1st and send him an email. And we'll present on you know, a recap, show the report, share links, that sort of thing, October. And I think that's it. We are into past our break time, but you know, we're all humans here. So if you can use your reaction, I want to know how y'all are feeling. Give us a green check mark if you want to just push through, skip a break, or take your own bio break on your own, but you can hear us in the background. If you're like, no, ma'am, I need a break right now for, let's say, 5 minutes, give us a red X. Okay. We've got 10 green check marks and 4 red X's, but I think we could all use a break. So let's come back at 11:15 to be a nice round number, and we will make up the time in the future, dearly Bobs. So I'm gonna pause the recording, get up, stretch your legs, come back in a couple minutes. We'll see you soon. Welcome back, folks. We are going to dive right into our next item. Jay, take it away.
All right, so this is another distillation of the input that we received from you all from October through February in the priority discussion process. And when you all filled out templates and presented to us, some others provided, you know, filled out templates or surveys and sent them in, and made a lot of specific requests. So we've tried to find a way to address all of those specific requests and show you what we came up with. Okay. So a refresher on the feedback that we received on lakes. So regions 2, 6, 7, and 8 provided specific feedback. Region 7's feedback was a little unclear. There's interest in Salton Sea, but unclear whether it's the sea itself or the tributaries or the wetlands. We need to follow up and get clarity on that. Division of Water Quality provided input and identified several lakes that are category 3 in the integrated report where there's a need for more data. We got input from tribes. We got a lot of input from OEHHA, CDFW fisheries listed some lakes that they would like to get more data on, and then the concerned citizens of Lake Arrowhead also provided some input. Some background information on costs, which all factors into the estimate that we can do approximately 15 lakes per year. I don't know if I made this first bullet a while back. I'm not sure if we've got the final word on cost yet, Autumn, for all the.
Yes and no.
Okay, we'll just let the bullet stand. We're not, so this is the cost information still being worked out. The analyte list at each water body is a big factor. Obviously, if we're doing PFAS and PCBs, and those are the big ticket items, has a big influence on how far the budget will go. The lake size is a big factor. The biggest lakes, we do 4 locations, so 4 times as expensive as a small lake where we do 1. So that all factors into our estimate that we can do approximately 15 lakes per year next year in 2026. So in coming up with this specific plan for 25, the priorities that went into it are listed here. One is being responsive to the input from the tribes. We got some good input from tribes. We want to provide positive feedback on that and address the information needs that they've expressed. Keep that relationship growing. Region 2 has a oxygenation study underway, and they want data to evaluate how that's going. So it's assessing a possible management solution. So that seems like a high priority. Region 8 specifically spelled out their needs for a few water bodies. So that made it easy to include those. Some of those DWQ Category 3 lakes were included, and some of OEHHA's requests that were specific. They had a couple of specific requests, and then also last year gave us a list of water bodies with high contaminant levels without advisories, and I selected some of the lakes that fit that description. And then one of the goals that Anna laid out is that we want to try to obtain samples across the region. So spreading the monitoring across regions, especially with PFAS monitoring in mind, and starting to get a handle on PFAS contamination across the state. So given all of those priorities and the specific requests that were made, I, with input from Anna, came up with this list of locations, this draft list for you all to consider. So it shows some of the things that I talked about in that last slide. It's got lakes kind of spread across regions to a high degree, to a large degree. The tribal requests were for Lake Mendocino in Region 1, and then Clear Lake and Blue Lakes in Region 5. So that was a priority. That in Region 2, the San Pablo monitoring requested by Region 2 is shown. A lot of the lakes requested by DWQ were in Region 2. A couple of the lakes that were on OEHHA's list get us a lake in Region 3 and Region 4. Hardy Reservoir was a specific request from OEHHA with a specific request for PCBs as a data gap there. The specific data gaps for analytes are also shown here, that based on what was requested. So a lot of mercury, organochlorine pesticides and selenium in Lake Madigan. That's the only, no, there's also DDT in Lake Elsinore, Region 8. So, but that's what those specific analyte listings are about. Those were what was requested. OEHHA also specifically requested Hernandez Reservoir, but we sampled that recently, and there's a challenge with sampling Hernandez. The access is a problem there, and Moss Landing recommended not going back there. So that didn't make the list. I didn't see Autumn's note on this until a couple hours ago this morning, and so I didn't change it, but June Lake was sampled recently. So we need to find a replacement for June Lake. And then Region 8, as I mentioned, had some specific requests that I included here. So there are also, as we often are able to, depending on access to this list of lakes, sometimes lakes are inaccessible. or we're able to do more than we anticipate. So we've got backup locations as well, and the requests from Fish and Wildlife and the Lake Arrowhead folks are on the backup list. I want to show the 26 plan because this has, well, I will show 26 because it shows some of the requests that kind of spilled over from 2025. We are planning on trying to meet all the requests that were made. I'm going to do that now. I'll come back to that design for 25. So for 26, the leftover lakes from 25, additional DWQ lakes. Region 6 has would like to get some of their lakes analyzed and had kind of a general request along those lines, but haven't specified the lakes yet. So in 26, the draft plan is to hopefully Region 6 will specify the lakes, figure out which lakes they would like to sample, and then we can sample several of those. Region 7, again, we need to clarify what would be valuable around Salton Sea. We could fit in more of the OEHHA request for high contaminant lakes without advisories. For PFAS, we'd like to sample across the regions again. So Region 7 is the one that would be lacking. Region 9 is doing a super thorough PFAS, like analyzing all the archives for PFAS for Region 9. So they don't really need the PFAS, but just for equity, we could try to include something in Region 9, and then continuing San Pablo. So 26 is, not fully filled in, but it's hitting some of the things that were deferred from 25. So especially the Region 6 and Region 7 and 9, be nice to fill in something so that we are sampling across all the regions. So then what would we actually do in 25? We'll follow those specific requests and, I think for the next round of consideration in discussion with this group, we'll lay out all the details and figure out the budget and how far the budget will go. But we'll follow all those specific requests. And then for the general design, our general goals, as they have been for a long time, are to support advisory development, support the integrated report assessments, in the general approach of sampling a predator for mercury, bottom feeders for organics, I think is still a generally good thing to do. Also generally including mercury, PCBs, and PFAS, but more targeted on PCBs as we've been doing. And then we can do prey fish in a targeted way, as we talked about earlier when we talked about the long-term monitoring priorities. Okay, so that's the draft plan, and I'll open it up for discussion. Autumn.
Hey, I just had a quick question. When you're talking about mercury in predators, are you still thinking about doing, up to 14 bass, if that's what we get for the size to mercury relationship in some of the water bodies? Or are you thinking something else?
I think that's a good default design. It depends on what the requesters really want. But I think if we're trying to track mercury, that's really a robust way to do it.
Yeah, before I jump to you, Lauren, I just want to note that, Jay, can you scroll down to the annual feedback process slide with the red? So what Jay just presented reflects what we heard from the annual feedback process. And one thing I really tried to reiterate there, and I want to do again here, is we welcome any requests from anyone, tribes, local water body agencies, non-governmental organizations, other state agencies, things like that. Now is your time to give us this feedback. I see some hands popping up. And we can add them to the backup list. The 2026 list is just what we have for now. So we'll keep shuffling over and recording things over time and trying to get the locations and the species and the analytes that people really want to see over time. We're opening our annual feedback process now, literally, and folks will have until September 1st to give us that feedback. So if you can't think of specifics now, or you want to review the slides in more detail, you have time to do that. But I just want to flag that now's the time if you want to get things into 2025 or 2026. Okay. I'll get off my soapbox. Lauren.
I like you being on your soapbox, Anna. It's always helpful. Good information you provide. Yeah, I'd like to go back to there we go. Yeah, so I saw that Clear Lake was requested by a tribe, and this goes back to my prior comment about how Region 5 does have some extra funding, specifically for analysis through Moss Landing, and that's going to be going on for the next few years. So I guess just we can have a conversation offline maybe about what specifically was requested, and I do know that there's some other monitoring efforts going on in Clear Lake. So I guess, maybe we can at least meet that need with some creative regional collaboration. And so that could free up some funds, or, as maybe Region 5 requests more, because I think I might have missed some opportunities in the last few months of providing some feedback to this. But yeah, that, maybe we could substitute something in there. But yeah, I will definitely be participating a little bit more and commenting on what Region 5 might be looking for as well. But just wanted to say that. And maybe another comment about the long-term priorities that kind of plays into this. I didn't ask it in the last conversation because we were running short on time, but I'll say it here because we have maybe a little bit more time. So the rivers sampling, I think I'm always asking about rivers, but I just kind of am wondering why we don't the long-term monitoring, is it being picked back up for rivers? Is it just because no other regions are really caring about it? Or, I just don't see that as being an option for, picking up that long-term monitoring for rivers in general.
Part of it was we didn't receive, I think the feedback that we got from the priorities assessment was everyone wants everything everywhere all at once. Rivers are the most expensive to sample. So I mean, as you know, when we did rivers last time, we had our usual budget and we got 6 locations, where if we do lakes, we can get, well, now only 15. But that doesn't mean it's off the table. There is a year for rivers, and we put rivers in the middle of the next 5 years so that we could think through priorities and get our monies and partnerships together to really hit rivers as hard as we can that year. And so we're not doing long-term trends for any water bodies for the next 5 years. It's just focused on gaps, but that doesn't mean we won't do them again. We're just taking one 5-year chunk at a time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I think I just wanted to plug that to say, hey, if we do, do some more continuous data collection, rivers, we've done the coast, we've done the lakes, I think, it might be time to focus back on the rivers. But of course, I want this to be, beneficial for everyone, not just Region 5. So just kind of plug in that for us.
Well, the process is, depends on everybody piping up on what they want to see. So casting your vote for the river work is definitely important and welcome. I want to comment
and not just for Mercury too. I'm interested in other things.
Yeah. On Clear Lake, It's great to hear that you might be able to kick in some funds for the analysis. I think there's a definite need for coordination. The tribes also, I think we need to reach out, make more effort to reach out to the tribal folks that provided that input, because they were not specific. And we tried, I got back to Anna and said, well, what do they, there's a lot of work going, Clear Lake is big, what's really of interest to them. We know that tribes often are interested in a lot of different species. And there's been a lot of work done in Clear Lake. So I think there's a need for coordination and trying, I think the fact that they provided input, like every little step forward with tribes and communities is huge. So I think we need to kind of follow up on that and try to get the details from them and try to meet those, like if they state what their needs are, we can meet them, and then that'll be a nice success.
And I did follow up to individuals who completed, like that we got feedback from, but bandwidth and capacity is like a real thing. But yes, I think reiterating and following up again will be critical.
Maybe if we come up with a straw man and say, well, this is what we want to do in Clear Lake. Do you like this or not? Maybe that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I like that idea. Kelly.
Hi guys. I'll see if my camera works. Okay, there.
Great.
Offsetter. Yeah, so we were actually able to secure discretionary contract funding and fund sampling at June Lake, Silver Lake, and Diaz Lake under collaboration with OEHHA and their needs, and some of them only had a few missing species that we were able to hopefully now get 3 new fish consumption advisories, so that was great. I don't know if we did miss, I'll have to talk to Lori about it, the call for more are requesting. So is that due September 1st? Is that correct? If we want to request different water bodies
for 2025?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's by September 1st.
I need to talk to Lori about it, but we're like a little on the fence with Lake Arrowhead because it is a private lake. So there's not really public fishing access to that. But my one question is, the lakes that we are interested in do have the Lahontan cutthroat trout, which is an endangered species, and that's what we ran across with this round. Was the permitting is, I guess, a lot more arduous.
Yes.
So is that an option for us to request those lakes that have those issues? Or
I'd say put in the request. The worst we can say is we can't get to it because of permits or other reasons, but we still want to have a record of what people want.
Okay, yeah, because that was a handful of our sites, so
yeah,
we would put that in, and then we just let you know that there are those issues there ahead of time. Okay, thank you so much.
Perfect. Thanks, Kelly.
Kelly, which lakes did you say you were able to do with your discretionary?
We sampled June Lake, Silver Lake, and Diaz Lake this
okay, so that's why June was covered, as Autumn told us.
And then, sorry if I missed this, my computer cut out for a second, but what does the S mean on
small, medium, and large?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's the lake size. So the small lakes get 1 location, medium gets 2, large gets 2 or 3,
Gotcha.
and then the extra large gets 4.
Thank you so much.
Kelly, I'd like to just respond about Arrowhead and the Lahontan. I think it's probably already too late to put in a permit for 25, but if we know now, we might, Wes can speak to this much better than I can, but it's more of a possibility than for 26.
Okay, that's awesome. Great to know. I know that we were scrambling to get some stuff because we had extra money, and we decided that wasn't going to happen this year. So we were able to work with Lori at OEHHA and get these other lakes that we think we were able to get enough info. So
yeah,
thank you guys.
Thank you.
Sorry, this is Lori. I'm on the phone from Region 6. Thanks, Kelly, for jumping in, and support everything Kelly said. We'll definitely get you guys some feedback by the September 1st deadline. We may have some other lakes actually around in the Mono Lake Basin that we may want to start considering too on our list. So we will get you feedback for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Lori. Wes, did you want to?
I was just gonna say, following up with what Autumn was saying about permitting, and I think, just like what you said, just listing all your species, and then we can see if we can get the permits or not in the timeline, but for the lakes work, sometimes those go a little quicker.
Yeah, submitting a request does not mean a guarantee that it will be sampled right now, but we'll do our best. Thanks, Wes. Okay, Jennifer, and then I'm going to keep us moving to our next item since we're behind time.
So I just had a question for Kelly and Lori for Region 6. For some reason, I thought that those 3 lakes were just for mercury only, but there was the potential that you guys were thinking about looking at other things as well. Am I wrong? June and Diaz.
Yeah, well, when I talked to Autumn a bit ago and we sort of finalized the analysis list, we're going to be creating some archives to give us flexibility in the future. And so mostly mercury, but I do think we ended up are going to run a few for PCBs, and then creating archives in case we want to run PFAS in the future. So I'm not at my computer right now, so I can't pull up our final list.
I can.
Oh yeah, Autumn has it.
Yeah. So at June Lake, we're doing PCBs in rainbow trout. We also got Tui chub there, but we're not running PCBs there yet. Silver Lake, we're doing PCBs on brown trout. And then Diaz Lake, OEHHA said that they did not need PCB data.
Awesome. Thanks. So if anything else comes up, requests, like I mentioned, now's the time. 2025 in particular, because of the permit lives that we lead, please, if you like you just want lakes 2025 or 2026, the more details you can provide, the better. Species, analytes, and we will factor that in to our plans. We welcome feedback, not just from our usual regional board partners and OEHHA and Biomonitoring California, but tribes, water agencies, community-based organizations. Anyone is welcome to give us feedback. And hopefully, as you can see by the priorities that we have listed, we are listening and acting on the feedback that we receive as quickly as we possibly can. That feedback, we're going to kind of like close the feedback process on September 1st for 2025 so we can get things going, but we're going to do the same thing for 2026. We'll revisit the 2026 with the feedback that we received, and we'll have another feedback process next year to refine 2026. And that's funny. I was waiting for you to advance the slides, Jay, but so we will present the final monitoring plan in October, put it on the website, shout it from the rooftops, all that good stuff. Moss Landing will get working on the application, and we'll begin sampling as soon as we can. Hopefully April or May, but permits stalled us until July this year. So TBD on that. Okay, moving right along. During the Science for Communities event, Wes pulled me aside and said, hey, now since I have you, can we add an item about posters on the next 2 meetings? So we are going to hear from OEHHA on getting some feedback on what the future of the posters might look like. Carrie, I want to keep us moving, so go ahead and put your comment in the chat and we can respond that way. So I think Lauren or Wes, go ahead and take it away for your item.
Yeah, I'll pass it over to Lauren since she did all the work.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. I have my camera on, but it doesn't look like you guys can see me. Can you at least hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, and you can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So we're running short on time. I'm going to keep this super short and sweet. But as Wes mentioned earlier, we are talking about adding QR codes to our posters. And Angie already gave a kind of a little overview on our posters. Thank you for that earlier. And I think most people have seen them before. So I'm just going to dive right in. Let me move out of the way. So I'm going to show you all 4 different options for poster designs and kind of walk you through like a little bit of changes we have on each one. And then at the end, there's going to be a poll for you guys all to provide your input and show us which one is your favorite. So on these 4 options, just look at this gray area here and these gray areas here. You can ignore all of the serving advice boxes in the middle. Those are not going to be changing. And we're using Lake Berryessa as an example because this is going to be our first one that's coming out hopefully with our QR code. So this is our original poster here, which is being presented as an option. Maybe you're very anti QR code, I don't know, but this is our original. Go back. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Our first option is the one with the least amount of change on it. All we've done here is take this choose the right fish text away, which we felt was a little redundant anyways, and added the QR code there. Nothing else has changed. For option C, we've centered our title text here. We've pulled the eat the good fish and avoid the bad fish text and centered it below the title. And we've added our QR code at the bottom, and all of this remains the same. And then our last option, we have our QR code now in the bottom left next to our contact information. So that's moved from the kind of the center over to the left. And it's been replaced with our serving size information. And we've cut down this text here, which kind of just describes what the serving size is. And we've made it specific by saying how many ounces it is for adults and for children. And I think that's about it. Added a little scan me to the QR code just to make it more clear. But those are the changes, and we love a captive audience, and we would love to poll you and see what your favorites are. I have one slide which has all 4 different options on them, and if anybody has any questions or thoughts or comments on any of these, we'd love to hear them also, just to help us put out kind of the best and most visually appealing product.
Yes. Before we jump into comments, everyone take a good look at this slide because I added a link to the chat for a Slido poll that's going to allow you to rank things, but I'm going to share my screen so you can use a QR code if you want to do the rankings on your phone. So option A is no change. Option B is QR code in the upper right. Option C is shifting things around a little bit, but QR code.
Centering the title, QR in the bottom right.
And then option D is staying centered, QR on the bottom left, and changing the serving size information. Yeah. So if you want to stop sharing your screen, I will share mine. So folks, I added a link into the chat if that's your preference, but you can also go to slido.com and type in the code 3418284 or use this QR code. And we're just gonna ask you to rank the 4 options, 1 being it's my fave, 4 being it's my least favorite. The Poll is open. I will show you the results in a second, but I don't want any survey bias happening. So I see, I'm looking on the back end, I see a couple of folks are ranking and results are coming in. So I'm going to,
Anna, would it help if I reshared? Or do you think we're good?
Yeah.
Can you go back? Can you just go back to the images one more time?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Can everybody see those?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys taking the time, giving us your feedback on this.
Okay, I'm gonna share. We've heard from 9 folks. I'm gonna share the screen so folks can see the results that are coming in a second. But before I do, I've heard from 9 and there's 26 of us here. So maybe I'll wait. Okay. Okay. We've got 12 folks. I'm going to take over sharing again, Lori.
Okay.
So we can look and see what's coming in.
In case people are having issues, just make sure you rank all of them and then you can vote, because that confused me for a second.
Nice.
Sorry, I
No,
thought it was
that's
like a
helpful.
select an option, but it's like rank them.
Yeah, so you click
Okay,
one
cool.
and then so it looks like we've heard from 15 folks and counting. C and D are tied, very close contenders. The original format without a QR code is last. For folks that have voted or anyone else that maybe hasn't but wants to provide feedback verbally and what you like, anything you want to share with the OEHHA, feel free to raise your hand.
Yeah, if you have any other comments too, we'd love to hear it. You don't just have to vote.
Yeah, and just as a disclaimer, some of the changes we're making or not making are based on prior testing, and big wholesale changes we would want to field test first, but we're definitely open to input.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jennifer?
Okay. I couldn't unmute it. I'm like, why is that not working? I love the simplified hand. My issue with the QA code on the very left is that makes you feel like you are getting a QR code about a WeHa versus the actual poster. And I think that that's why you're seeing this flip-flop with C and D. Because the simplified hand is fantastic, but I wish that it was still in that place, but that the QA code was on the right-hand side. So it's a little more obvious that you're going to the poster, not to WeHa.
I see. Okay. Thanks for that input.
Oh, and then I like the QR code on the bottom, because when people post these things, you're more likely to be at the bottom of the poster and not at the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jay?
I had a similar thought as Jennifer. I like the last point she made, but I like the QR code up at the top, because then it's clear that it's referring to the whole advisory. Kind of similar to what Jennifer thought. If it's in the bottom left, I thought it was like a OEHHA QR code, or if it's in the bottom right, it's a little unclear. Is it about the serving size down there? So.
Okay, so you think having the QR code right next to our contact information makes you think it's just going to be like a general OEHHA landing page and not information specifically on the advisory?
Right.
Okay.
And it looks like we have a +1 in the chat for Jennifer's comments as well. Awesome. I'm gonna keep us moving so we can end as close to on time as possible. hopefully OEHA, I will share the results of, we heard from 15 folks that took the poll. Everything's really close, but I will share these results with OEHA as well as any feedback that people shared in the chat.
Awesome. Thanks to everybody for participating. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. This is what the stew is for.
We all had our internal favorites, but figured we'd reach out and see what other people's favorites were too.
Yeah, super helpful. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap us through our last item. I just wanted to give a sneak preview, and I'm gonna try and do it in like 5-ish minutes so we can end on time. I wanted to give a sneak preview of our next meeting. For the past couple of years, our meetings have been closer to like an hour and a half to 2 hours, but October is going to be a packed agenda. We're going to take all of the 3-hour time block to go through potentially all of the things on this slide. Some things might shift, but we're going to hear from the draft report that Jay mentioned for 2021. We're going to hear a little update on how sampling has been going this year, the final long-term and 2025 plans. As I mentioned, OEHA is going to share some fish advisory development priorities. And my hope is that we can share our new STU website, which is in development, and I'll give a demonstration on how that works. And do a gut check on what we want to see for the STU meetings in 2025. You do have to register, but if you register for this meeting, you might have been able to register for both at once. So, but if you haven't and you don't see it on your calendar, you can hit that link and the agenda will go out around the same timeline as we have been. For quick updates, Autumn and I are tagged out those coast monitoring updates. So we're gonna keep on keeping on with that. For the training series, if you represent a tribe or you work with tribes that you think might be interested in the training, please register or share the registration with them. Was there any other action items with quick updates that I might have missed that aren't reflected here that we want to capture in the notes?
The status of the data.
Same
one. One more is we'll coordinate with the OEHA on microsystem.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? Never mind.
Okay, great. For item 3, I didn't hear any action items from Angie's presentation, but I think one thing I might add to, if we hear of announcements or anything like that, I'll try and share that through the Safety at Work Group email list as soon as materials are ready for applications and things like that. I'll follow up with Angie and try and help coordinate that. So this will be added to the slide that you see on the website, but it's empty now. For the long-term monitoring plan, if you have any thoughts about what Jay presented and you want to share some recommendations, please do so by September 1st, again, so we can wrap that up and be able to submit it and finalize it in October. Jay will give an awesome presentation as per usual, and the usual kind of reminder for regional boards is as we lock in our 5-year plan, think about what partnership can look like, just as if y'all were doing earlier with 2025 plans. Speaking of which, please email your requests to Jay for additional lakes, species, analytes, as specific as possible with items that we've already listed on these slides, which will be shared, or anything else that you want to request. Again, we're visiting lakes 2025 and 2026. So, you know, don't worry about times, I guess, but whatever you're thinking about in terms of requests now, send it to us sooner so we can worry about the permits and timing and budgets and things like that, and shift this year and next year. Again, Jay's gonna button that all up, tie it in a bow, and share it with us in October. and I'll work with him to post all of the things on our website. And as soon as we finish that, I can already feel Autumn going, give me the data for the permits. So we're gonna get going as soon as they can on that, so that we can get that rolling. Anything else on those items that I might have missed? Oh, I have a note to follow up with Lauren Lelis about a Region 5 partnership for funding and things like that. So I will add that to the list. Anything else?
Yeah, coordination on Clear Lake.
Yeah. Clear Lake analysis. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. OEHHA is, I'm gonna send the feedback that we received from that poll, which thank you for completing that, and anything that was shared in the chat specific to feedback on the posters. I'm going to share that with OEHHA, and then OEHHA is going to take that in and incorporate that into their poster designs as they deem appropriate. Items for item 6. Okay, great.
Got 1 minute left.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I am going to literally, as soon as we sign off, start processing this recording and try and get it on YouTube in the next day or so. And I will send a link to the recording and the slides as soon as I can. And the notes will come out sometime next week. Again, for October, we're going to be hearing a lot of great things. Remember to register. When you do, you got to do an extra step to get a calendar invitation, but it's there. And I did it with 1 minute to spare, you guys. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you all in October. Have a great afternoon, y'all.
Thanks,
you all.
Anna.
That was some
Thanks, Jay.
great stew.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.